Start. The Women's Reservation Bill, which has been a topic of significant debate and discussion in India for decades, seeks to reserve 33% of all seats in the Lok Sabha and state legislative assemblies for women. The bill is a landmark proposal aimed at ensuring greater representation of women in Indian politics, which has historically been dominated by men. The idea of gender quotas in legislative bodies is not new, and several countries worldwide have adopted similar measures to promote gender equality and increase women's participation in governance. In India, the need for such a bill has been widely recognized given the persistent gender disparities in political representation. Despite being one of the world's largest democracies, India has struggled to achieve gender parity in its political institutions. Women currently make up only about 14% of the Lok Sabha, far below the global average for female parliamentary representation, which stands at around 26%. The Women's Reservation Bill is seen as a crucial step toward addressing this imbalance and empowering women to take on leadership roles in decision-making processes. The history of the Women's Reservation Bill dates back to the 1990s when it was first introduced in the Parliament. The bill was initially presented in 1996 by the Dave Govda-led United Front government, but failed to gain the necessary support. Subsequent governments made multiple attempts to pass the legislation, but each time it was met with fierce resistance both within and outside the parliament. The opposition to the bill has come from various quarters, including political parties that fear a loss of power and influence if more seats are reserved for women. Some critics have argued that the bill would disproportionately benefit women from privileged backgrounds, such as those belonging to political dynasties, rather than empowering women from marginalized or rural communities. Others have raised concerns about the potential disruption of political hierarchies and the need for a more nuanced approach that considers caste and regional dynamics. These debates have often resulted in heated parliamentary sessions, and the bill has remained a contentious issue. Despite the opposition, the bill's proponents argue that it is a necessary measure to break the cycle of male dominance in Indian politics and pave the way for more inclusive governance. They point to the success of gender quotas in local governance, where the 73rd and 74th constitutional amendments mandated 33% reservation for women in Panchayati Raj institutions and urban local bodies. These amendments have had a transformative impact, bringing millions of women into the political arena and giving them a voice in local decision-making processes. Studies have shown that women's participation in local governance has led to more effective and inclusive policy outcomes, particularly in areas related to health, education, and social welfare. Advocates of the Women's Reservation Bill argue that extending similar measures to state and national legislatures would yield comparable benefits, ensuring that women's perspectives are better represented in policymaking. The Women's Reservation Bill has received support from various political parties, women's rights organizations, and civil society groups who have campaigned vigorously for its passage. The bill was last introduced in the Rajya Sabha in 2008 by the UPA government led by Prime Minister Manmohan Singh and was passed by the upper house in 2010. However, it failed to clear the Lok Sabha and has since lapsed. The bill's failure to pass in the lower house has been attributed to the lack of political will and the deeply entrenched patriarchal norms that continue to shape Indian politics. The delay in passing the bill has drawn criticism from women's rights activists who argue that the country cannot claim to be a true democracy without ensuring equal representation for half of its population. They emphasize that political empowerment is a fundamental right and a prerequisite for achieving gender equality in other spheres of life, such as education, employment, and healthcare. The debate around the Women's Reservation Bill also raises important questions about the nature of democracy and the role of affirmative action in achieving social justice. Supporters of the bill argue that legislative quotas are a temporary but necessary measure to correct historical injustices and structural inequalities that have marginalized women. They point out that women face significant barriers to entering politics, including discrimination, lack of financial resources, and the threat of violence. These barriers are particularly pronounced for women from marginalized communities, such as Dalits, Adivasis, and religious minorities. Affirmative action, in the form of reserved seats, is seen as a way to level the playing field and ensure that women have a fair chance to participate in the political process. Critics, however, contend that reservations may not be the most effective way to achieve gender equality, and that they could lead to tokenism where women are elected but lack real power or influence. They argue that efforts should instead focus on creating a more enabling environment for women in politics, such as providing leadership training, campaign financing, and support networks. The international experience with gender quotas provides valuable insights into the potential impact of the Women's Reservation Bill. Countries like Rwanda, Norway, and Sweden have successfully implemented gender quotas, leading to a significant increase in female representation in their legislatures. Rwanda, for instance, has one of the highest percentages of women in parliament globally, with women holding over 60% of the seats. This increase in female representation has been linked to more progressive policies on issues such as maternal health, education, and gender-based violence. While the context in India is different, these examples highlight the transformative potential of legislative quotas. Proponents of the Women's Reservation Bill believe that similar outcomes can be achieved in India, provided that the quotas are implemented effectively and are accompanied by measures to support and empower women lawmakers. Another critical aspect of the debate is the intersectionality of gender, caste, and class. Some political parties and activists have called for sub-quotas within the Women's Reservation Bill to ensure that women from marginalized communities are adequately represented. They argue that without such provisions, the bill could end up benefiting only a select group of elite women, further entrenching existing inequalities.